All right. Give this a second to populate and start seeing a few people in here. It looks like I'm sitting at a kid's drum set. Everything is I'll show you, everything is really, really close. All right. So anyway, yeah, what are we doing this evening? We're actually going to change over this entire drum setup. I'll get started just as soon as this thing kind of rolls a little bit. But yeah, so we're going to change this entire drum setup. We're going to talk about drum setups. Hey, what's going on, Paul? Good to see you, buddy. We're going to talk about drum setups. We're going to talk about vintage drums. And there's going to be a lot of vintage drums and brand new cymbals. So anyway, yeah, let me make sure that everything's working and we'll get started. This is going to be available on the Drum Corner website for students at Drum Corner. So yeah, if you don't catch it live, it'll be in the archive over there. I think we're going to leave it up over here on the YouTube channel too. Why not? Sounds like a plan. All right, here we go. Hey there, and welcome to another live stream. We're going to do some really cool stuff today, and you may notice I look a little weird behind this drum set, and there's a reason for that. Let me see if I can go to another camera here a second. Yeah, see, like I'm sitting kind of low. I'm sitting kind of weird. Things are in different places. I'll explain the setup in a second. You kind of see how the pedals are in a weirder place than what they normally are. This setup and the fact that I'm going to be changing it over today reminded me that I probably needed to talk about this topic with you, which is this idea of drum setups. And the one thing about drums, probably more than any other instrument, is that a drummer's setup is incredibly personal. It really has a lot to do with your build and your body. You know, me, I'm 6'5" and about 255 pounds. In another life, I should have been a wrestler. So my drum setup is going to be a lot different than someone who's, say, like 5'10" and, I don't know, 200 pounds or 170 pounds, or a lot less than me. But anyway, so this setup is actually left over from a session that we did on Saturday with the band. I had a band that came in, and I did a bunch of work with them to record tracks for their very first release. And so, as with most drummers when they come in, occasionally I'll get a drummer that just sits down at the kit and's like, yeah, sounds great. They might move the hi-hat and then they're off and running. But for the most part, most drummers are going to need to move things around to accommodate both their body type, their size, and their playing style as well. Whether you're a schooled player or you're completely self-taught, that's going to affect your setup, I believe. There are things that self-taught players do that really haven't looked at many other drummers that are intuitive to them. To me, at least with students that I teach, I show them that ergonomically, maybe they're not making the best choices in the world. Not that any setup, I have to preface this because, people get their feelings hurt. I've had comments on my channel before, like whether it's cleaning cymbals or throne heights or whatever, like people get their feelings hurt when you express an opinion. But I can tell you from about 40 years of playing, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but there are definitely some ways to get yourself seated and set up that work ergonomically better for your body. They work with the way your body works. Now, of course, if you're used to playing in a certain style, for years I saw the Lars Ulrich setup. Tons of drummers had the drums where the toms were basically like a wall in front of them. Your style and how you hit the drums may have a lot to do with the way that you set your drums up. Who your favorite drummers are may have something to do with how you set up your drums. The fact that you may or may not use, like in some cases, I've seen some drummers that really don't use their left foot very much. They basically use it to hold down the hi-hat, and occasionally they'll open it up. So that hi-hat placement is very different than someone who does a lot of work, especially that has practiced a lot of four-way independence, someone that does a lot of work with their left foot. So, yeah, so I'm going to flip back over here for a second. I'm going to let you see kind of this overhead shot. You can kind of see right now, obviously, the wonderful guy that was playing here this weekend sits a lot closer to the drums. There's not hardly any room between the throne. There's probably 3 fingers worth of width between the edge of the throne and the snare drum. And you'll notice that the feet are kind of almost at an asymmetrical place. So his left foot is super close to him. His right foot is more in front of him. And I think that part of the reason there is that bass drum is stayed where it stayed because it was set up already before we got here. But so let's talk about a few things. I'm going to be standing up, so this is probably the best way to see me. But let's take a look over in camera 3 here a second. So this throne height. For someone who's a lot shorter, this throne height is probably perfect. Now for me, I'm going to have some problems here because it's a lot lower. And most of the time, I've talked about this in other videos, I try and set my my feet and my legs in a way that just feels like I'm sitting in a chair. And so what I'm going to do in this case, one, I'm going to pull this throne back a little bit. I'm going to take this. Let's see if you can see this in the camera better. Nope, there's not a good shot of this. I'm going to crank this throne up a bit, and I'm going to basically do a thing where I'm going to sit at a height where I'm basically at a 90-degree angle or a little bit more than a 90-degree angle with my legs. And as far as my pedals go, you know what? To make this a whole lot easier, let's get rid of some things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the snare drum. Let's get this out of here. We'll move this out of the way for now. We don't need it. And also, I don't want to move these mics too far because we're going to have to put them back here in just a bit. But let's also take a look at maybe let's just get rid of all this stuff too. This stuff might influence how we set things up. How you like my head right there? Right in the camera. Let's go back over here. If you got any questions as we go, feel free to put those in the comment section below. Since I don't have a movable camera and a camera person, you're going to see me kind of coming in and out of camera all during this live stream. I'm going to pull these cymbals off for now. And they're going to come back when we actually get ready to position those cymbals. Let's see. One thing you might be able to see is the distance between this crash cymbal is maybe about a little more than 1 hand width above that. It's a lot lower than what you've probably seen me play with. Again, no right or wrong here. All right, I'm just kind of getting rid of stuff. And since we're going to change out this entire kit for something completely different, for some recording sessions I'm doing the next couple of days, we're just going to move this. We're going to move this stand and this tom out of the way and put these in the, let's put these in here for now. They'll go in the hall eventually. And we're going to move. Let's go ahead and move this floor tom out of the way as well, too. Why not? All right. So, you can tell now, we'll get an overhead shot of this. But now, basically, what we've reduced this setup to is where our feet go. So I'm going to give you an overhead shot here. And we're going to take a look at something. So what I want to do, if I were just sitting, like I'll use this as an example. If I were sitting in a chair, and in this case I'm kind of facing this way, we're going to change the way we think about where the front of the drum kit is. Now, the front of the drum kit for most people on stage is the front of the bass drum. We generally set our bass drum flush with the front of the stage, flush with the front of the riser, and that way it's sort of square to the audience. But I want you to think about a different approach. We're going to let the middle of the kit actually be right in between where our legs are. So if I just sit in a chair, just average, everyday household chair, wherever my feet fall, naturally is where I want that to go. If this left foot's way back here, I'm going to end up being on the balls of my foot for this left foot. And it's going to be difficult if you need to raise your entire leg, or I have almost no ability to just raise my toe. If I just need a little bit of a hi-hat opening, if I'm too far back with this left foot and I'm on the ball of my foot, then I can't use my toe. And for small little hi-hat changes, I use my toe a lot. I just lift the toe, get a little relief on the hi-hat, get a thicker sound. Can't really do that when that's all the way back. So go back to our overhead setup here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this hi-hat, and I'm going to put it in a place where, as I get my my feet in place, what feels like the most natural position for my feet when I'm sitting. So now, when I'm sitting, now I've got my bass drum a little bit off axis to the camera, and the camera is really not shooting directly into the middle of the kit. None of that matters to me. Not a single part of that. What matters to me is that I'm sitting in the most neutral, comfortable position possible, where I've got my back pretty straight and I'm balanced on either my flat feet or the balls of my feet or balls of my toes. And you'll notice, you can kind of see it here, it's a 90-degree angle or maybe a little bit more than 90 degrees. Sometimes I may sit a little higher if I want a little bit more leverage. If I'm playing a little bit louder, then I actually do sit just a tad bit higher, just a few degrees higher, because I have a little more downward leverage on the kit. And so now I put my pedals where my feet naturally go. So in this sort of setup right here is where my feet feel most comfortable. I feel the most relaxed. And now I have options. If I want to play with my heel down, all these mics are open, so you'll probably hear some drums. If I want to play heel down, I can play heel down. If I want to play heel up, all I have to do is I either just raise my heel, or most of the time I actually slide the ball of my foot more towards the middle of the pedal. If I'm playing really fast, or if I'm doing double bass drum, I may come back on the back third of the pedal. And it's a little hard to tell with these trick pedals because they don't have a hinge. They're just what's called a longboard. I mean, they have a hinge, but there's not a heel plate right at the hinge. The hinge goes all the way to the end of this footboard. The middle of the pedal is really more like more than halfway up. So you can kind of see where this stripe of gaff tape is, and that'll give you an idea kind of where that is. Now, to me, right there, my feet are. If I look straight down from where I'm sitting, there's a line where my toes are. It's a straight line across my toes. And when I put that straight line across my toes, the middle of the kit falls right here. All right? So that's going to allow me the most natural, relaxed position that I could possibly get. And I have access. If I want to play heel down or heel up on the bass drum, if I get more or less active, I've got a lot of ability to kind of move around on this pedal. With my hi-hat foot, there are times when all I'm doing is lifting my toe. If I just need a little bit of relief, I'm going to lift my toe. There's going to be times when I'm playing the hi-hat like it's a shaker. as an additional sound source. I can very easily just raise my heel and I'm playing that sound source. Now, let's take a look at the height of the hi-hat. So right now, it's almost completely out of frame. I want you to think about something. Well, normally, I might put the snare drum first, but since the hi-hat's sitting there, if our regular relaxed playing position is right here, and if you'll look in camera 4 here, if I just bring my hands up, have my hands somewhere around a 90-degree angle, 45 in from both sticks, that's, again, going to be my most relaxed, natural resting pose. So when I'm in this resting pose this way, then if I want to play the hi-hat, I want to be able to just reach up and get the hi-hat. You can kind of see here, I'm going to go from this position. I'm not going to go straight over because I'm going to leave myself no room. I'm going to have to go up a little bit to create some distance since I am crossing my hands, since I don't play open-handed. If I played open-handed, I could probably get away with it being lower. But since I play, more of a traditional kind of cross-handed style, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at being able to come up and leave myself just enough room so that I can manipulate this right hand to do anything I want to do in the hi-hat, but still be able to do especially a lot of my lighter work on the snare drum. Now, I want to see about where that height is. Where is that height? Where does my stick naturally come down? And I want to be able to get that hi-hat at that height. So we're going to adjust this a little bit. Now, again, a lot of my choices... Go to this camera so you're not looking at the back of my head. A lot of my choices are motivated by a few different things. When it comes to the height of the hi-hat, I want to make sure that I can access all of the sounds that are available to me with not much of a move of my stick. I don't want to have to do any kind of extreme angles with my stick. If you do the old Nirvana days, Dave Grohl, where the hi-hat is way up here, that's great for just bashing the side of it and getting a really cool rock sound that looks really cool because you're just beating it like it owes you money. But if I want to access the sounds on the top of the hi-hat, if that hi-hat's too high, I've got to raise these elbows. I've got to get this whole part of my back all engaged when all I want to do is just get these sounds. So for me, I'm going to find a height. It starts with one hand, but then eventually it gets to two, and I think I'm going to go a little bit higher than that, actually. I want to be able to just basically reach up just a little bit, not change my stick angle much, and not have to reach up over the top of the hi-hat. I want to be able to just go from my neutral resting position right over here. Just boom, boom, right there. Boom, boom. Other than a little bit of maybe an extension in the right arm, just a little bit, that's really not a whole lot of movement. And now I've got access to the top of the hi-hat, the bell of the hi-hat. Let's go to this camera here. Top of the hi-hat, the bell of the hi-hat, the side of the hi-hat. Everything here is really just a matter of maybe a few inches. Not much at all. Not that I play a ton on the bell of the hi-hat, but I definitely will sometimes get up there for that particular sound. Now, these are 15-inch hi-hats, so the edge of that cymbal is a little closer. And on this trick pedal, if you'll kind of look at my feet, when I get the pedal in the right spot, my heel is not hanging off the back of this thing. Kind of like your heel rests on the heel plate here on the bass drum pedal. My foot is fully on top of this footboard. All right? It's a little bit different footboard than most guys are used to. All right? So that's a pretty comfortable position. So now let's bring the snare drum into it. We're going to change that bass drum in a second. But so what I'm going to do when I bring my snare drum in is a couple of things. I want the center of the drum, the main striking area of the drum, to be where my stick tips are when I'm in my resting position. So in this case, if I'm just going to my resting position, from the top we'll look. If I go into my resting position, that's about right. There's only one problem though, and you may be able to see it from one of these angles on the side. If you see, the drum is super low. Now, if I spread my legs out and kind of do this number where I drop more in between kind of here, I can get there, but I actually have to splay my legs out to be able to give myself clearance. Well, now I'm on kind of the sides of my foot. I'm not planted directly. I'm doing this to get to my snare drum. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to raise this, and I'm actually going to go a little bit forward. Because now when I'm hitting, I'm actually kind of going a little in front of that. All right. So now I'm going to raise this height so that microphone will have to come up. Just move the mic for now. I want to raise this height so that when I drop my hand, I'm just above the rim. I'm maybe one stick, the circumference of the stick above the rim. And I want to find that sweet spot right in between my 2 feet. Remember, the center of the kit is not the bass drum. The center of the kit's going to be over here. So that's where I'm going to end up with. Now, I have access to, move that there. I have access to all the sounds on the kit. If I want a rim shot, all I got to do is just drop my hand. The levels on here are probably a lot different than our normal web stream. We're gonna fix those in just a bit. We'll give it a second, see what it sounds like. So I'm going to give you 4 hits without the rim shot, 4 hits with the rim shot. And you'll notice I really don't have to change my hand position much at all. I'm not really changing it. So yeah, so I'm not hitting, even when I come down for the rim shot, not hitting my leg at all. And it's nice and comfortable, just right there. Now, the other thing that I take into consideration, because I use my left foot a lot, especially when I'm up on the ride cymbal. But even sometimes when I'm playing patterns on the hi-hat, I may be getting an extra sound by manipulating the hat with my foot and not getting an open sound. So I might be playing a rhythm, sort of like this. Let's see if I can just come up with something for you. So you can see I'm kind of getting an extra little chick there. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room to run here. These are a brand new hi-hat to me. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. So yeah, so now all of a sudden, not only am I getting a little bit of a kind of sound without an opening from the foot, I'm actually able to access all the sounds from the snare drum. So I'm able to get all my ghost notes. I'm able to get anything that I want as far as rim shot or not rim shot, the full dynamic range of the snare. Now I can get to it, and I'm not going to run into my legs at any point. Now, you see some drummers that really will lean more into having this thing even higher because they want to make sure that they get uber consistent rim shots. I've gotten where half the time I play with rim shots, half the time I don't. I've gotten where I like that sound where I'm not playing with rim shots. So being able to access both of those is important to me. Again, if you got any questions at all, just put them in the comments. Put them in the comments down there. All right, so that takes care of these main pieces. We've got our bass drum placement, our snare drum placement, and our hi-hat. And now I'm able to just play completely comfortably. I can sit and I can keep my back straight. I can access all the sounds I want to get right here. I can have everything I want to do with the snare drum right or left hand. If I wanted to play open-handed, I could very easily get rim shots over here on my right hand and not have to move my legs. There are times, because I like to change and feel, that I'll play open-handed. And so I can still access, and these sticks are actually a little bit longer, so I got about that much longer. I got to get used to changing my own cameras. I got about that much more length on these sticks than I normally do. This is the 5B Rebound Long from ProMark. Not really commercial, just telling you. But anyway, so when I come down on the snare drum, if I wanted to get a rim shot, you'll notice that I've got space. There's a whole bit of space right up here under my hand when I come down. So I'm not hitting my leg. I'm not having to move my leg out of the way to get to that sound, to access that sound. So now I'm completely comfortable. Now, let's go ahead and change out this bass drum, because we're going for a totally different drum sound, which is brings me sort of the next thing I want to talk about while we're doing this. Let me mute some things just so you don't hear a bunch of rustling as I'm moving this bass drum around. The drums that I've been using the last couple of weeks, have been these 1957 3-ply round badge Gretsch drums. I think they call them broadcasters, the original broadcasters. The mythical broadcasters. I think I'm right about that, because this is the 3-ply. And it lends itself to a certain sound, especially for rock music, classic rock, singer-songwriter stuff, any of that. This is an amazing, amazing kick drum. It's got just the right amount of beef. It's not too big. It's not too small. Depending on how I muffle this drum, I'm going to have to unhook this pedal here. Depending on how I muffle the drum, I can get a deader sound, a thuddier sound. I can get a more open sound. I don't normally pull the front head off of this thing, but occasionally if I want to get more of that super dry sound, we may pull the front head off of this thing. And so yeah, there's a particular sound that these drums get that you're just not going to get unless you buy the new reissues, or you get an older drum. Uh-oh. I think I hooked myself there. Yeah, I did. All right. So I'm going to go get a different bass drum. There's another very classic sound in the drum world. You've heard it on a ton of records. A ton of records that you love. From a ton of drummers that you've probably tried to emulate. And that's the other vintage option, the other American company that was making drums way back in the day. Let's see if I can get these out of here. Kind of. There we go. And that other company is going to be Ludwig. So, now this is a 20-inch bass drum, a little tighter sound, not necessarily smaller. Yeah, not necessarily smaller, just different. And while I'm out here, I might as well grab this floor tom. But yeah, when it comes to rock and roll, now I've got a 22 that's probably 10 years older than this one, but we're going for a very particular kind of sound for some of these tunes that we're working on this week. And it's this kind of rock and roll sound. Now, the one thing I will say about some of these vintage drums is the spurs on these things can be a little persnickety. So what I find is, it's a different design. These, I really don't have a good camera angle for you. These sort of, well, I'll just show you in this camera. Now, oh, this doesn't come out. Interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah, so one, this isn't going to come out of here very easily. So I'm just going to leave it in there. But it's just a real thin arm. It's almost like what you'd put a cowbell on or something nowadays. So, so one of the things that I do is get this thing attached to this pedal. I don't want to move the pedal. The pedal's in the perfect spot. Now that I've got that, let's go back over here a second. Put this on the pedal. When I'm not talking, I can do these changeovers in 20 minutes. If a full kit changeover in 20 minutes. When I'm talking to you and we're talking about stuff, it'll probably take me an hour to do this. All right, so now, let's see if you can see that in the front. Yeah, you can already see it's a little bit smaller bass drum. But what I've done is, because I'd already placed my pedal in the right place, that I moved the drum to the pedal. So that's one of the things that's going to be a bit of a hack for you, is especially if you go between bass drum sizes, settle on where the pedal needs to be, and then move the drum to the pedal. I see a lot of drummers that, especially if they're using different size bass drums, different depth bass drums, they'll move this thing around and kind of get their right leg in different places. For me, I want to have one posture, one position that's comfortable, that allows me to access all the sounds and play comfortably. And the easiest way to do that is bring the drum to the pedal. And instead of trying to accommodate in some other way based on the size of the drum. So the pedal didn't move at all. Now this bass drum is where it needs to be to accommodate where I want my feet to go. Now, one of the other things that I've noticed with some of these vintage legs is that when you get it at wherever it needs to be, especially with a newer pedal, there's a little bit of like an angle towards the front. And really, we want to try and get this drum as flat as we can. One, because if the drum's leaning too far forward, away from you, you're actually going to have to go further with the pedal to contact the drum. So it's going to affect the playability of the drum for you. You're actually going to have to go further down with your pedal. And it's also going to change, depending on what kind of beater you're using, it's going to change the angle at which your beater is hitting the drum. Now, depending on how you have that set, this is definitely set for a much bigger drum. depending on how long you've been using your beater, most people have got a little bit of a plane that they've worn with their beater from whatever distance or height that you've had that, whatever angle it comes in at. So if you've been using the same beater for a while, yeah, you'll definitely find maybe you flatten it out a little bit. Well, that angle is definitely going to be different if you're using some of these. The one problem with these legs is they don't extend out. So what I've got to do is kind of do some accommodations for these legs to be able to get them to touch the ground. And the way I'm doing that, if you can see this at all, is I've got this other little apparatus that I'm using on the front that has a couple of spikes in front of it. So it's doing two things. It's raising the front of the bass drum up a little bit so that I can get more of a parallel drum, parallel across the top, so that I'm going to hit flush with the bass drum. I'm not going to have to travel a longer distance. And it also gives me a little bit more protection from the drum creeping forward as well. So just have to set the height of these two. You can't really see it in any of my angles, but it's just a couple of these little spurs on the front of the drum. And so now the front of the bass drum is actually elevated off the ground just a little bit. And I adjust these spurs to accommodate that. Make sure I'm touching the ground pretty well on both sides there. Yep. Come in just a little bit with that. So now, all right. Yeah, so now I've got a drum that's a lot more parallel to the floor. And I don't have my foot cam hooked up for you today, but when I come down, you can kind of see it from up top. When I come down, now that the drum is parallel to the floor, when I get in what would be my stopping place with that pedal, it's right in the right spot for the beater to contact the drum. I'm not having to go further. How can I show this to you? You get what I'm saying. I don't have to go further in the throw. It stops right where it needs to stop. And especially if you play with the beater off the head, when I stop, there's a natural distance that I'm used to having between that head and that beater that I let come back. So whether I play heel up or heel down, it's going the correct distance. If that drum is angled forward, how can I show this to you? If it's angled forward, then the beater's got to go further to get to the head, and that's going to feel uncomfortable. So, all right. So now we're set up with the bass drum where it needs to be. That's all good. I'm going to move my mics back to where they need to be as well, or at least the starting position for where these mics need to be. And you'll notice that I've got 3 mics on this kick drum. Kind of a reason for that. One of these is made by Solomon. It's called a Low Freak. And it's a sub kick, basically. All it really gets is the super, super low end. And then I've got this other bass drum microphone that goes right in the middle. I have to make a little adjustment here because this drum's closer to the floor. And this mic that I'm using actually is a prototype of a Session Ace mic. Before COVID, the plan was to put out a whole line of studio microphones. And I'm going to sandbag that just a little bit. Because normally when I have just a regular a newer bass drum, I've got that gap up underneath the rim, and I can kind of slide the microphone up under there a little bit. But in this case, I don't really have that. So there we go. All right, and now make sure that the microphone's in the right spot. Put it right there. In fact, you know what? I'm going to turn it upside down so we can get a better angle on this. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So in this case, I'm going maybe that far inside the drum with the microphone so that I get a particular kind of beater sound. The closer I go to the batter head, the more of the attack of the beater I'm going to hear. The further back I go, the more of the full sound of the drum I get, the full range of the drum. The thing I have to be careful of is I don't really like putting it at the air hole, because then you can get a little of that whiz coming by. You can hear a little of that air. I'm not a fan of that. All right, so this other mic that you might be able to see from up there, it's a vintage shotgun microphone from EV. And with this one, because it's a shotgun mic, it's so incredibly directional that I just put it right inside, just past the hole in the front of the drum. So there we go. That's the mic setup. So why the vintage microphone? I don't use it on everything. A lot of times in the studio, I'll set up more mics than I'll actually use in the final mix. Either I'm going to blend that microphone in, or if I'm going for a really particular sound, I'm looking for something as I'm talking to you. I might even add this sound to whatever's happening. I'm going to borrow a couple of legs from this other drum here. Sometimes that shotgun mic becomes my primary bass drum. It has a ton of attack to it. Not as much low end, but I don't worry about not having low end because I've got the low freak there. Let's see. Yeah, that's going to work. Let's do that. So I'm going to put some legs on this floor tom a second. Hope you're doing well out there. Hey there, Leandro. Good to see you. Brazil. You're here from Brazil. Man, welcome, Brazil. Appreciate you for hanging out. We're just doing some cool stuff, putting some vintage drums up, working on some tones, working on some sounds. If you got any questions as we're going along, just let me know. All right, so the one thing about these vintage drums is that you sort of have to use the legs that came with them, which is a little bit smaller leg. And so in this case, because I'm kind of a tall guy, I end up putting these legs all the way to the end right there so that I can get it just about the right height. And it's almost exactly parallel to the snare drum. And for me, I don't really put... I put maybe a little bit of an angle towards me, just a taste, so that I don't accidentally run into the rim. But the idea with that placement right there. Hey, David. Hey, man. I got word from the factory yesterday. We're about 7 days away from them shipping, and it's supposed to be 2 days because we're air freighting everything with the Session Ace in-ear monitors. And so, yeah, we're going to be shipping by the 25th. The Pelican cases are coming in tomorrow. I got a notification on that. Some of the other accessories and stuff will be here about middle of next week. So yeah, the 25th, we're going to be sending those things out. You're going to love them. They're absolutely amazing. And I'm looking forward to getting them in your hands, or getting them in your ears, really. Yeah. The new Session Ace, the 10 drivers. You probably got the email a couple of days ago. We haven't changed it on the website yet, but what was a 9-driver in-ear monitor has become a 10-driver. And we've basically, my one critique that we couldn't seem to do with the older design that we had come up with for the ear piece, we couldn't get one more driver in there to flatten the mid-range out a little bit more. Well, when we had to change the materials and the way we made the actual earpiece, it gave us a little more room, so we could put another driver in there, and then boom, all of a sudden flatten the mid-range out a little bit more and get more clarity in the mids. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. I'm excited for you to be able to hear these things. They sound amazing. Yeah, we're just setting drums up, man. We're just setting drums and talking about vintage drums. One thing I was saying about these vintage drums, because I haven't changed anything out on these. This is exactly how this drum came in 1965. I have to use the vintage legs. Now you'll notice they're not nearly as stable as the. Yeah, dude, I'm pumped too. I'm super pumped. I've been using the 9 drivers for the last 8 months at this point. And then with the 10 drivers, they were really good about rolling out a set for me to be able to try to make sure I'd like it. And the 10 drivers sounded even better. I'm like, guys, I can't believe this. It's even better than what we had. So it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah, they should be shipping the 25th, which means you'll get them by the 1st of the month. And there's going to be some cool extras in there for anybody that pre-ordered. Cool little upgrades, a few little extra things that I'm just going to throw in just as a nice thank you. All right, so with this floor tom, now this is a 14-inch floor tom, so I can get it a little bit closer to me. But again, same kind of thing. I want to be able to, if you look at from the overhead here, I want to be able to do this. This is exactly what's going to happen. If I'm in my resting position here and I pivot, look what happens. I'm right in the middle of the drum over here. And all I did was, now keep in mind, these are actually a little bit longer than my usual 5B. So if I hold them where I'd normally get my 5B, boom, right there, boom, right there. All I'm doing is I'm just pivoting. I'm just pivoting from here to there. And, I could even bring it a little closer probably. So now, that drum's exactly right there. If I need to get to it, I just reach over, and there it is. Because it's the same height as the snare drum, I'm not reaching up, I'm not going down, it's all right there. I'm going to turn my mic off a second. We're going to, let's put this floor tom mic in the right spot. This drum's a lot higher than we had the other one there, so yeah, that should be about right for the height on the floor tom there. Let's see. See if we need to do a little tuning with this. I'll listen to it in the mics a second, but right now I'm just listening kind of in the room. Yeah, we're going to need to tune that a little bit. So, what am I going to do to tune this drum? Come back over here. I'm going to check a few things. First, I'm going to take this dampener off. Oh, I broke it. All right, Evans. That's not good. I shouldn't be able to pull that and break it. Talk to them about that. All right. There's one on the bottom, too. Now, if you can't hear past the overtones, you can always kind of lightly put your finger in the middle there. That's a little bit low. It's a little bit low. Probably got a little low just moving around from the... I took these out on a gig not too long ago. So, I need to come up with that. That's a little low. Still low. I think both sides are going to be low. There we go. A little bit on that. Cool. That should level it out a bit. Now, one thing I got to say. Because of these bearing edges, even when you get these vintage drums in tune, they may have a little wackiness in them. So, and especially because the sound I'm going for. There we go. That's it. I usually put a little bit of dampening on these vintage drums just to kill a few of those overtones. I haven't. These drums are exactly like they came in 1965. I wasn't going to have anybody recut these edges. You know, they are what they are. And so you have to work with that a little bit on these vintage drums. But I can work with that. I'll listen to it in just a second and make sure that sounds good to the microphone. But now, yeah. So now I'm in this position right here. Boom, 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 boom. The top. Let's look at the top. Right here, right there, right there. It's all just right there. I am using these longer sticks. I think I'm going to go get a regular 5B here in a second. Now, all we're missing is the rack tom. So, let's grab a rack tom real quick. Yeah, it's been quite a journey with the Session Ace ears the last... I would have loved to have had these out a year ago. But, you know, you get them out when you get them out, you know. Money has a lot to do with how fast you can do things sometimes. If you've got a ton of money to throw at something, you can usually get it done faster. I really appreciate you for pre-ordering those. That really did help with pushing us through to have the budget that we needed to be able to do that first production run. Having so many wonderful people, that great musicians that we could serve, getting them a great product, and getting into them for a really good price. That was the other thing. I wanted to be able to make sure that we could do this at a price that you could afford, that you wouldn't have to, you know, take a loan out to have what you needed for your gigs. All right, so we got our rack tom here, and let's see, let's go all the way down with that. One of the reasons why I use a rack, and I have people that they'll see that I'm using a rack, and they're like, "Man, racks are so 1980s, dude." And you know, after I got out of heavy metal bands, I stopped using a rack, and as I had more kits, bing boom, we gotta get that tuned. As I started getting more kits to choose from around here, it's a little low, still low. Put my finger there to damp a few of the higher overtones. It's still a little low right there. Cool, that one's in tune. I needed a way to be able to see if I can pull this off without. I've already broke the edge of this one too. I guess we're gonna pull that off altogether. Yeah, my one critique about these Evans pads, I really love the fact that they don't get dirty on the top. The one problem is if you don't pull them right, like I've done on so many of these things, you'll basically kind of cut this thing in half, or in this case, the corner. And when they get like this, where you basically kind of pulled it away, the harder part of whatever this material is, when you split it like that and you put it down the drum, it rattles. So that's my only real critique about that. That could be a little more pliable. Let's see. Go up a little bit there. Now, we'll say this head has been played a good bit. And it's not really dented, but it's definitely been played. I've used it on a couple of live gigs recently. And a lot of times I would probably change these heads. Especially being that they're G1s. But it's pretty close. I think if I'd put one of these on here, bring down that a little bit. Well, there you go. Boom, 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 boom. That's going to be dang near about perfect. Now, I did modify this drum. I kept the old hardware for this drum, but so that it would work with all my rack. Oh, back to the idea of the rack. Why am I using the rack? It allows me to be able to change kit pieces out pretty easily. So if I have a setup that I really, really like a whole lot, but I need to change the toms, whether it's 2 toms, 1 tom, whatever, I can very easily leave everything else, pull 1 or 2 or 3 toms off, and put whatever else I want there. If I need to change out a floor tom, obviously that's pretty easy to do. If I have a setup that I like up top here, but I need to change the bass drum, since nothing's mounted on the bass drum, and since this rack sort of has a footprint that really stays out of the way of this drum, if I need to go from something like this 20 to, say, a 24, I don't really have to move a bunch of stands to accommodate it. Again, we want to set the kit up as much as we can and leave it like it is. Like when you get your feet in the right place, leave it where it is. When the snare stand's in the right place, the only thing I want to do is just raise and lower it depending on the depth of the snare drum that I'm using. Even with the toms, the most that I do sometimes is I'll change the angle on a tom, but even that, for the most part, is pretty stock standard. The only thing that really changes is I may move an accessory clamp here to get the drums where they need to be. If I'm using 2 large toms or like an 8 and let's say a 10 and a 12, it's going to be a different positioning than if I'm using like a 12 and a 13. Or if I'm doing 8, 10, 12 up top, then I need to kind of be able to move it around, but it's all moving around on the bar, so it's super easy to accommodate. So yeah. I say all that to say the one modification I made to this drum kit is I put one of these new Atlas mounts, Ludwig Atlas mounts on here. Took off the old tom mount, the one that goes on the rail consolette. And I didn't take the whole rail consolette off. I left that on there. The only thing I did is I pulled the L-arm out and I stored it. And I stored this original piece. So if I ever decide that I don't want this kit anymore and I'm going to give it back to Jeff, the wonderful dude, my buddy Jeff that gifted this. We'll say he gifted it. It's on permanent loan. It will always be Jeff's drum set. It's just that he's been so gracious to let me use it. But if I want to give it back to him, then I can put it back the way that I found it, basically. All right, so now, because of this drum, its depth and the height that I want it to be at, now I'm just kind of manipulating the arm to put that drum right where I need it to be. Now I've started putting my toms a little bit higher. Thanks to my buddy Shannon Corey. He sort of he got me into this same thing. You know, the same philosophy that I was using for everything else about my setup didn't seem to really match with my philosophy about my toms. My toms were pretty low, actually. And part of that was the visual. I wanted to be able to, you know, if the tom is too high, then it obscures me live a little bit. I want to be able to see people a little bit more. But, you know, Shannon was very astute in saying, well, you know where the natural end of your stroke is, you're having to go past the natural end of your stroke to get to the drum. So normally I would have put this drum much more lower down, like the rim would probably been here. And the idea was, well, I'm just moving here, and pushing out. But what I didn't really realize too much was it's not just pushing out. You want the drum to kind of come forward to you a little bit, so that when I raise up, and in this case, I might even, and this is the great thing about the rack, when I have that drum where I feel like it should be, because I'm on the L arms, I'm not on like a pearl tom that has this direction, occasionally I'll have to reach up and pull the rack back. So I'm just going to pull this rack back just a little bit. Wasn't graceful, but it got it done, I guess. All right, yeah, there we go. So now when I raise my hands, boom, 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 boom. If anything, you know, maybe I come down a little bit, but not much. You know, just so I don't hit the rim. That's kind of the idea. I'll be able to reach up and get. Now that I'm starting to get this stuff sitting, because of what I know the track's going to sound like. Remember what I told you, I sit a little higher sometimes if I know I'm going to play harder. I'm going to go up just a little bit on the throne. So I'm still just a little more than 90 degrees, but now I'm on top of this just a little bit more. With that setup, yeah, that's nice. How about I talk to you with my mic on? I may have somebody make some more of these particular width or diameter vintage legs where I can get this thing up. I'd love that up about another inch just for my own comfort. But other than that, that's nice. So now, if you look at this kit, everything like that, the tom is directly in front of me at this point. You know, with the V that my feet make, the snare is just right there, so I can access that sound. The rack tom's directly in front, and it's at the head is at the end of my throw. Whatever my throw would be to get that note, boom, there's the head. I'm not having to go past the natural throw of my arm, and it's not so high that I'm going to run into the rim. So yeah, so that's that part of the setup. Now we'll move the mic to, now we're going to move the mic to the tom. Do the same thing with the snare too. I just realized I didn't move the, all right, so now we got the hi-hat. We're going to move this mic in, get it right there on the hi-hat. This is a Session Ace mic that I hope we'll put out at some point. It's just a tiny little condenser mic. We're going to go up a little bit here with this mic. These mics aren't great for camera, these 421s, but I'm not really worried about camera this week. I'm worried about sound. So you'll notice I'm coming just a little bit over the rim. Let me see if there's another place I can show you that's easier to see this. Let's try here. So what happens is, what's happening here is I'm just a little bit over the rim, and I'm basically pointing the front of this microphone at the center of this head. And the diaphragm is maybe, like the diaphragm is right there. So the diaphragm is maybe about 3 finger breadths, three finger widths from the top of the head. That's a good starting place for me. And with this one, same basic kind of thing. Sometimes I go a little closer with the floor tom mic, just so I get a little more isolation, because I'm since it's so close to this ride cymbal, sometimes I go a little closer with the floor tom. But again, a little bit over the edge of the drum, and the diaphragm is pointing towards the middle of the drum, about 3 fingers from, if I lay my fingers down, a little more. This one's a little more than 3 fingers from the head itself. All right. So now that takes care of that. So let's talk about cymbals for a second, because as I'm going to put this ride cymbal in the right place for me, I'm using a much different cymbal than I've ever used. Again, thanks to my buddy Shannon Corey for loaning these to me. He had a set of the 2002 Big Beats by Paiste. And these Big Beats are a much different sound than I currently have in my cymbal arsenal altogether. And so, yeah, so he loaned these to me to try. I'm going to go just out a little with that. There we go. He loaned these to me to try. Now, ride cymbal. That camera angle is very deceptive because if you looked at this, you would think that when I come down, I'm going to run into this ride cymbal, but I'm not. I've got a clear path. Like if I just put my arm down, I've got a clear path from this drum to this drum. This ride cymbal's right here. But check this out. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to just, boom, just come up. Show you from the top here. I want to be able to, as I'm playing, if I'm going to try and stay relaxed and in a position of comfort, I just want to lift my hand. That's it. Now, sometimes when I play live, if I'm trying to be more visual, I may put that ride cymbal up a lot higher because it looks cool up there, but I'll also angle it a lot more so that it's easy for me just to do the same thing, just like here. So there's an arc that kind of comes here that I've got that I can work with on this ride cymbal. In this case, when I'm just cutting tracks, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's all about the comfort and the sound. And so right there, if I just raise, boom, right there, right there, right there. From here to there, here to there. And all I'm doing is, I mean, my elbow really doesn't even move. I'm going from here to right there, and I'm on the middle of the drum, or middle of the cymbal. So if I want to go from the drum to the ride cymbal, it's just a pivot. Looking at some of those Pro Tools levels, I need to play around with these levels. Sorry if it's distorted or anything. We haven't got to setting levels yet. So yeah, so now if I want the bell of the ride cymbal, I do push out just a little bit. I push it out a little extra, but it's not so much that I'm engaging my whole shoulder. When I'm going from here, and I just need to grab that ride cymbal, bell right there, all I'm doing is just pushing out a little bit, right there. That's all I'm doing. I just push out just ever so slightly, and sometimes I even lean forward into it a little bit more. Don't slouch into it. Just take from the entire, there you go, just like that. Sometimes I lean forward, especially if I'm really digging in. I lean forward ever so slightly just to get into that cymbal just a little bit more. So now I've got it right there that I can work with it. It's just perfectly where it needs to be. Now, one thing that you'll notice, and something I'm cognizant of, is the distances of cymbals. Now, my ride cymbal, unless I really want to just get it angled and get it super up and away, I try and get it as much on the back side of the pattern of these mics as I can. I may get a little bit of ride cymbal bleed into this microphone. Not much I can do about that. We're just going to have to gate that. But you'll notice as I put my crash cymbals up, I'm going to make sure that I get my height on my crash cymbals at a height that's comfortable to reach up and just smack, just boom, just go from here to here, here to there, and come down and get them. But like you'll notice right here, if I were to put a crash cymbal right on this tilter where it is right now, I'm going to get a lot of crash cymbal bleed right directly into this mic and a ton of crash cymbal bleed directly into this mic. What I want to do is I'm going to get this cymbal up higher so that I don't have any problems with the bleed. Let's go to the overhead here for a second. So yeah, so we're going to raise this. And probably going to come in just a little bit. I'm using an 18-inch crash cymbal. There's an 18 and a 19. I'm going to do a video demo of these 2002s. I'm going to do a video demo of these things, and I'm probably going to put the 19 up as well. But for the recordings we're doing the next few days, I'm just going with the 18 big beat in this crash position. and the 20 is going to be over in this position. All right, so now we're just going to play around with this. And I'm going to also come up on this. All right, so let's talk about this. Now, I'm on the back side of the pattern for both of these mics. This hi-hat mic, I'm more towards the back of the mic. For this tom mic right here, I'm more towards the back part of the tom mic. Look at it from here. It's kind of hard to see when I've got a black shirt on, but you can see, like, here's the diaphragm, and it's pointed this direction. Here's where the cymbal is. I'm going to get a fair amount of cymbal rejection. Now, you'll notice I've got an angle. I used to be a little bit flatter with my cymbals. But one thing that I've done more and more as time has gone on is I've started accessing the top of the cymbal for some of my crash sounds. Used to, I was always just right on the edge. Now check this out. If I just reach up, I'm right here. I want a crash cymbal, I just reach up. Boom, right there. My elbow comes up a little bit, but not a whole lot. Just a little bit, so I can get up to there. And again, I'm not having to tension and hold this arm up to get way up here for a cymbal. I'm also not way down here, so that I'm getting myself into this area where the mics are, or heaven forbid I hit the cymbal when I'm trying to go for this tom-tom. I've got a fair amount of separation here and here, so I'm not going to hit that crash cymbal at any point when I'm going for any of this other stuff. If I'm playing on the hi-hat and I need to hit the crash cymbal, I'm just right there. Again, I have no idea what those levels. I'm seeing levels in Pro Tools that I need to do some adjustment for, so I'm going to apologize for that. We're going to get to the sound in a second. But the idea here is that as I'm playing, I'm just completely comfortable just to reach up and grab that cymbal. Just reach up and grab the cymbal. I'm not having to reach way up here. And I'm also not having to reach forward. So, if I had this cymbal way down, I'd probably have to push it out a little bit so I'd leave myself some room to get here and to get over here. Don't have to do that. I can leave it up exactly where it needs to fall, and I've got plenty of room. Not going to hit anything underneath, and I got it nice. The other thing, too, is especially with close mics, having close mics on the drums, I mean, we want to try and get a pretty accurate picture of the kit and the overheads, but for most contemporary music now, especially with the overheads as close as they are. Like my overheads now, I don't have my tape measure here, but my overheads are, what's this? My overheads are only about that far away. They're just out of frame here from, can you see them in the top? I don't know if you can see them in the top camera or not. Nope. We placed these so that they're actually out of camera so you can't see them. But my overheads, I've got probably half the distance between the first crash cymbal and the ceiling here is where my overheads are. So I've got a few more feet I could go back up. If I wanted a more complete picture in the overheads, then I could back up a little bit. But the great thing about sort of this position of the overheads and where these cymbals are is they really are kind of a cymbal plus mic. It's a kit mic. I can get a pretty accurate balance of the kit in there, but the cymbals have a little bit of a priority in my overheads because I've got these close mics. And we're going to probably gate some toms. We're going to put a lot of compression on the close mics, get a real punchy direct sound. So, I really need just a nice accurate picture of the cymbal layout over here in my overheads. All right, so the last thing we got left is we're going to put this 20 up. Before I put it up, I already kind of see this is going to be in the wrong position, so I'm going to change it a little bit. So again, I try and keep things in front of me as much as I possibly can. I don't like things to be too far on the side, because then I've got to do a lot to twist my body around to get into the right place. So as much as possible, I try and keep things as in front of me as possible. So let's put this 20 up. Man, there's a lot of blue in that picture, boy. Look at that. The blue lights, the blue drums. It's a whole lot of blue, y'all. I like blue. Blue's nice. All right. So if I take a look at this crash cymbal here, let's come from this side. Right now, probably a little too close and the angle's a little off. So let's do something about this. Let's bring this angle up. I have to drop it. And then I'm going to come back, which is going to do two things. It's going to move it away from me, and it's going to drop. There we go. It's going to drop that. And there we go. Yeah. So now, if I'm over here on the ride cymbal, and I just need a little bit of crash cymbal, it's just a little pivot of the wrist. That's all it is, a little pivot of the wrist. If I'm over here on the floor tom, I'm in the same plane. Check this out. I'm in the same plane as my floor tom. And then all I do is I just reach up. Look at that. My stick tip is going to hit right there. Now, as I'm looking at this, maybe it could come up just a little bit. Now these big beats are a little bit different because they don't make a distinction on this. This is not a big beat crash. This is not a big beat ride cymbal. It is a 2002 Big Beat 22-inch cymbal, so I can ride on this thing. I can crash on that cymbal. I can ride on this if I want to ride on it, knowing that sometimes I may put a little more angle in it so that I can reach the top of that more. It's got a great bell. Listen to this bell. If I want a bell that cuts, man, that thing is going to cut real nice. But I can crash on this. Probably ride on that too. Yeah, this isn't an 18-inch crash cymbal. It's an 18-inch big beat. I could, if I had a jazz gig or something, I could probably ride on the top of that real nice. It's got a nice warm sound to it. So yeah. So now I've got everything sitting here. And the idea is that as I'm playing, I should be able just to kind of reach up and get whatever I need to get. Reach around, get whatever I need to get. Move around without a whole lot going on. And I'm totally comfortable. I'm totally in my most natural, relaxed position the whole time that I'm playing. If I'm up here with both hands on the hi-hat, the most that I ever have to do is just rotate here at my waist. Maybe when I'm going both hands up here, I rotate at my waist just a little bit to be able to get more in front and more aligned so that, you know, my elbow's not in a weird place. So I'm right there. I'm right here. I'm right there. Everything is exactly where I need it, and I'm not having to do a whole lot. Should probably move that camera back this way just a little bit. But yeah, you can kind of see right here. So there's my, in fact, I am going to do that. Nice straight posture, just right there. I am wondering for a second, I've got my Pro Tools behind me. I'm a little further forward than I am most of the time. Most of the time I look right here and I see my Pro Tools rig. So I think we're a little further forward in this room than I normally am. But yeah, I'm gonna look for a second, and I'm gonna put my ears in. We're gonna hear what it sounds like. I'm gonna listen. I'm also gonna look at my levels in Pro Tools. I know I've got some levels that I need to change, and we'll do a little bit of that. My battery, yeah, battery's good. So yeah, let's put some ears in. Let's see what these drums sound like, and what sort of changes I may need to make. If you got any questions, just put them in the comments down there. Or like David, if you want to leave a comment and just say hey, and you're excited about getting your in-ears. I haven't tried to sell anybody anything. That's one thing I haven't done on this live stream. Have I yet? I don't think I have. I probably should. That would be the smarter thing, to try and sell you some dang in-ears. Anyway, so yeah, I'm turning this mic off. So yeah, I am going to make a few adjustments. Let's that kick drum right now is the major offender. Let me just hit a few other things and see where we're sitting. Snare drum up. Yeah, so I'm going to make a few adjustments in here. In the control room. You know what? Let me see if I can swap myself over so that you can see the control room while I'm making those. Let's see. All right, where's my control room? Full screen. Look at that. There's my control room. It's not too much of a mess. I don't have an overhead shot for my control room. All right, so, hey there. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to make a few. I've got mic pre's over here that you can't see. Right now, all of the close mics on the drums are going into the 7th Circle Audio N72s, which is a Neve clone. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to come back on the trim there and there. I'm going to come up on the trim on the snare drum. Those looked okay. I'm going to make one little adjustment in my overheads. All right, so I'll tell you about the mic pre's. Close mics, like I said, 7th Circle Audio N72s, Neve style, nice warm, rich sound if you push a little harder on it. And right now I'm running most of my what says gain. Most of my gains are either 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or 2 o'clock. So somewhere in the middle. So not super saturated, but I'm definitely pushing some level in there. And then I'm using my trim knob, which is below there, to make sure that I've got the right level going into my Pro Tools rig. Hey, Chris Russell, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Good to see you. So yeah, if you know anything about a Neve style mic pre, like a 1072 or something, 1073, especially these 7th circles, kind of anywhere from 11 to 2 on my gain, and then I just adjust the trim to get the right level going into the recorder. Overheads, right now, my overheads are actually going through a couple of Focusrite ESA 428s. Sometimes I have them going through my Day Kings, but for some reason I changed my mind. You know what? Nope, that's not right. They are going through the Day Kings. Yep. Looking at my patch bay over here. So I'm going through a couple of Day Kings, this mic pre 4, a couple of Day Kings for the room mics, no compression, and then an AMR, what is it, VMP2? Yeah, VMP2 tube mic pre for my overheads, which is a flavor very similar to a Universal Audio. Right above it, if you could see here, I've got a Universal Audio 2610. They're very similar mic flavors. In this case, I'm using the AMR because I'm putting just a couple of dB of high and low in that EQ on that mic pre. So yeah, so I just needed to check out a couple of these levels that I noticed were a little off. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I messed up my mix. Oh well. That doesn't affect you. It affects my Pro Tools mix. I'm just trying to look at my levels here. There we go. Let's go see what the levels are out there now that I've made that change. Ba-da-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do. All right, let's see. Let's come back over to it looks like that control room's kind of a mess. It's not. It's still set for this past weekend. I haven't pulled anything up from there. All right, so now when I hit the kick drum, I should see some better levels here. Yeah, it was playing, so I wasn't seeing my levels. So yeah, I think I came up a little bit too much on the snare drum trim. The trim on those 7 circles is pretty touchy. You can get you can go from -18 to -6 and hardly even move the knob. How you doing, Chris? Good to see you. Let's see. Let's bring this snare drum back. Bring this kick drum outside up. Everything else should be about right. And I'm also going to close these doors. So there we go. Oh, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. The snare drum is not a vintage snare drum. Let's see if we can see it over in here. So I put a picture up on Reddit. This is a Bucks County 5x14 bell brass snare drum. For some of the stuff I'm going to be doing the next couple of days, it's sort of my starting point snare sound. The bell brass snares have become my favorite sound, sort of my, let's go to that first sound. So this is made by Bucks County. This thing's about 10 years old, I think. I'd have to ask Chris, and I'm sure he probably remembers. The guy who made this, I'm sure he probably remembers when he made it. I bought it secondhand. But it's like a 3mm shell. It's the same thickness as the Gretsch bell brass, which I've got a 6.5 Gretsch bell brass. At the time, Bucks County. Mike Dawson loves those drums, and for good reason. They make some incredible drums. And yeah, every kit that Mike puts up, every snare he puts up, this Bucks County just sounds amazing. I'm like, well, geez, I wish I had one of those. Oh, I wish I had one of those too. And I wish, it's not like I don't have enough drums around here, but yeah. So this is a Bucks County snare drum, bell brass 5x14. At the time, nobody had the 6.5s in Gretsch in stock, and I also wanted a 5x14. And so it was one of those where this came up on eBay at just the right time, had the money for either a 6.5 or something else. Couldn't find a Gretsch anywhere. Nobody had one in stock. This has been several years ago. And this one came up on eBay, and it was the right price. And because it was Bucks County, at the time, this is probably long before Mike was using them, or yeah, before he was like the poster guy for it. Nobody really knew about those drums. And so I got a really good deal for this. I mean, I might have paid $600 for it. A really good deal for a bell brass snare drum. That's unheard of. And then eventually I bought a 6.5 of the Gretsch, which I love too. When you think of the perfect snare drum sample, a lot of people think Black Beauty, and with good reason. And I've got a Black Beauty here that I love, 6.5 Black Beauty, and I have a 5 as well. I really love both of them. But to me, the quintessential like sample snare drum, the perfect snare drum sound, is this bell brass sound. And so yeah, for the stuff that I'm doing the next few days, I wanted to start with this. I was gonna start with a Ludwig, something more vintage, because we're using the 1965 drums. Oh, the beers. See, that's on my list. A 5.5x15. It is on my list of. I have a few 15-inch drums. The most notable one, I've got one of those Kenny Aronoff, what is it, 4x15, the Trackmaster. I've got one of those, and it's a great sound. It's a very specific sound. But I've heard several of those beers, and they sound amazing. I've got a few friends that have them. And it is definitely on my list of, not that I need another dang snare drum, but if I got nothing else to buy and I want to buy something, at some point I'll get a 15-inch 5.5x15. I love those drums. Sound amazing. They sound amazing. So yeah, so the kit we got is a 1965 or 66. I think it's 66. 1966 Ludwig. I can't remember what they called these. It's not a super classic. It's not a downbeat. It's anyway. It's but it's 2012-14, and other than the tom mount that I swapped out for an Atlas tom mount, nothing's been changed on those drums. And then we've got the Bucks County bell brass, and that's my starting place. The cymbals are completely new for me. I'm borrowing these from my buddy Shannon Corey. These are some Paiste 2000. It's not a club date, and it's not a club date because I think the club dates have only one tension thing in the middle. I think those are the ones that have the tension box in the middle, lug box, whatever it is. This one's got the 2. It's just, normally this kit, for whatever this series was called, came in 22, 12 or 13, 16. And this was a 2012, 14. So the only difference is the sizes, not the make of the drum. They made the drum the same way. It's just that the sizes. I used to know when I first got these, I looked it up and I just can't remember what it is. But yeah, these were gifted to me by a very good friend of mine. I considered them on permanent loan. He said you can have them, but if I ever decided I don't want them anymore, I get to give them back to Jeff. So Jeff Jeffries has been so nice. I talked about him a little bit in my new video that's up about the clean and dirty ride cymbals, because the ride cymbal that I was playing in that video is the ride cymbal that came with that kit. There's a set of hi-hats came with it too, very much like a mid-60s, super thin kind of 14-inch Zildjian hi-hat. We're going to do something special with those. But these 2002s, I've been looking at these for a while, and I just didn't I didn't want to spring for something I hadn't heard yet. And so my buddy Shannon had a set of these, and he loaned them to me last week. And so just trying them out, seeing what they sound like. And it's a different sound than the Modern Essentials. I'm absolutely in love with the Paiste Modern Essentials. I just was looking for some other sounds. It's at a certain point you just get curious what else is out there. So I'm gonna play this just a little bit, just so you can kind of hear this kit. I'm gonna also use it to check my levels. I'm gonna fire up Pro Tools here and see. Come on, keyboard. There we go. I'm gonna capture a little of this so that I can go back and listen to make sure my tones are good. And then, so just at this point, I'm pretty certain of all my EQ. May have a few tweaks to do in my EQ. Pretty certain about my input compression. I've got a little bit of compression just touching each of the close mics. A little bit of compression, just 1 or 2 dB hitting on the overheads. And I'm curious to what these cymbals sound like. At a certain point, I'll flip on something to play along to, too. So. Yeah. It's they feel good. They feel good. I'm still trying to get my ears kind of set as far as my level goes. These cymbals are interesting. There's an interesting sound. Yeah. It's making me play different a little bit. You know what would help probably? Let me flip over and just put something to play to. This is just a 4-bar loop of some stuff here. All right, that's pretty cool. Pull that down in my ears a little bit though. Geez, hang on. iPad, come down just a little bit. There we go. Feel like I'm blowing out I'm not hearing enough drums compared to the. Hang on, let me get a little bit happening here. Let's come down on the iPad. Actually, we'll leave the iPad up for you. Let's come over to mine. Oh, because my iPad is 4 dB hotter than it is for you. Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting. I'm gonna have to play with these a little bit. I'm gonna have to really play with these. I think it's a different sound than I'm used to hearing, especially in my ears. It's a little more of a. It's actually a little more contained than I thought it would be. I thought it would be a washier, more open kind of sound. It's actually a little more contained. It's interesting. It's an interesting sound. These. I don't know what they're sounding like to you. I'm gonna go back. Let me turn that off now. Yeah, I got a nice capture over here on Pro Tools. So what I'll do after levels look good. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll go back and I'll listen to them in Pro Tools, and I'll see what do they sound like. Of course, I'll need to check, make sure my overhead's in the right spot. I may need to change them for the sound we're going for these tunes we're doing the next couple of days. But yeah, it's just a matter of what do these things really sound like when I hear them? Because I know what they sound like in my ears. Do they sound the same coming out of those speakers? They should be pretty close with the ears I'm using, these Session Ace ears. They should be pretty close. Whatever's happening in the speakers should be close to this. But that's the one thing about in-ears, no matter whose in-ears you use, having the sound that close to your head, especially if it's coupled to your head, there's always going to be a little bit of a difference between what it sounds like in the ears and what it sounds like in the studio monitors. So studio monitors are always like, that's the gospel, man. If they sound great in the speakers, then maybe I'd do a little tweaking and get it to sound just perfect in my ears. And I really haven't gone through and done anything mix-wise. Like, I haven't done anything mix-wise here. I should be listening to the same thing that you're hearing. So, like for me, I could probably use a little more of the overheads. Let's see. So yeah, for me, I actually kind of want a little more of the overhead, to believe it or not. I bring a little more overheads in. I bring in a little more cymbal, a little bit more room. Yeah, so I'll just kind of play around with get my ear mix right. You're hearing my ear mix. The only difference I saw was that I had put the iPad about 40 dB louder in my ears than in your mix, and that was just to kind of keep it tucked in into the drums so you guys could hear drums. Yeah. So that's this setup. That's a little bit of a demo. I'm gonna do a video over the weekend of these cymbals. I'm gonna hang the 19 over here, and so I'll have 19, 20, 18, 19, 20, 22, and the 15-inch hats to demo. And that'll probably be the next video you see on my YouTube channel, just a demo of those with this kit. And yeah, so once I get files later today for the project that we're doing this weekend, I'll start on those tomorrow and just be tracking for the next few days on this kit. If these cymbals sound great, the only thing I'm going to do is just change out probably the snare drum from tune to tune. The thing that's great about having some choices drum-wise, usually when I'm playing on, especially if I'm playing on more than 4 or 5 tracks on somebody's record, unless the tunes are super different, like way different from tune to tune to tune, usually I'll have an overall sound that's like my sound for the record. And in this case, like the kick and toms definitely are heading in the right direction. We'll see how many of the tunes that the snare drum is appropriate for. Maybe the most I'll do is tune it up or tune it down. Maybe if I've got a ballad in that batch of tunes, if I tune this thing super low and it's not, oh thanks man, I'm telling you, I won't really know what these cymbals sound like until I go in there. I heard somebody else playing them the entire weekend when we were tracking, but the thing about cymbals, man, your touch, everybody's touch is different. You could take the exact same set of cymbals and let 10 guys play on them, and there's an overall sound that'll be the same, but everybody's touch is different. And so the same set of cymbals for a different drummer are going to sound slightly different. And for me, like I said, I'm having to kind of adjust my touch a little bit because it's not what I'm used to. I've been playing those Minor Essentials since they came out, like 10 years. I don't know. That's been my main go-to. I mean, I may swap out a ride cymbal or swap out a crash, but 70% of the time I'm playing on those 602 Modern Essentials, and I've sort of developed a thing with them. Like I've gotten to know them. it's like going on a first date with a girl and you hadn't dated in like 2 decades. It's like, heaven forbid I'd ever have to do that again. Nope, I'm not planning on ever having to do that again. But sit down with a new set of cymbals and a new drum set. I mean, I know it took me probably 6 months of playing with this drum set to really get comfortable with it and know what it would do. It took me a little while with these drums to really kind of know what all they could do. There's a break-in period, a get-to-know-you period with stuff. There'll be a get-to-know-you period with these cymbals. I'm sure I'm going to get a set of them. It's just a matter of, what do they provide me different than what I've already got out there in the rack, and where can I see them? Yeah, and it's every bit of this. I mean, snare drums. I mean, sure, everybody hitting a rim shot on a snare drum is going to sound kind of similar. But especially once you get it into the music, the music has everything, to me, the music that I'm playing has everything to do with how I'm going to play. Like how I played to that little drum loop thing is just how I played that drum loop. If you look at the video that I put up with the clean versus dirty cymbals, hopefully you see a little bit of a difference in approach for those different tunes. I mean, there's a way that I play that's the way that I play, I guess, but there's definitely a big wide berth from one side to the other based on the style of music. What I do on a pop rock thing is how I would play is very different than how I would play on, say, a jazz thing or a shuffle. I have a way I like to play shuffles, but if it ain't that kind of shuffle, I got to change the way I play to fit the tune, So it's at some point maybe I'll do a more thought out video of this. But one of the reasons why I've got so many different kinds of drum kits and cymbals and snare drums and microphone combinations and mic pre's, and it really is to try and tailor the sound for exactly what the music wants. Like I love the 7-circle the N72s that I'm using for the close mics. Kick drum sounds great. The snare drum always sounds great. Like that bank of mic pre's always sounds fabulous. But if for some reason I need a different sound, there's 40 other channels of mic pre's in there of different flavors, tube flavors, British flavors, API kind of American-y, mid-forward flavors. Like I'll change all of this stuff depending on what the sound is that I'm going for. And so the gear will change, but for me also the way I play will change. And it's been the hardest thing for me as a working player because I don't feel like I can tell anybody what I sound like. I sound like whatever the music sounds like, hopefully. If the music sounds one particular way, I'm going to sound like that. If it sounds another particular way, it's a lot easier, I think, when you have a sound. When you're Phil Rudd, people know what Phil Rudd sounds like. Like you wouldn't put Phil Rudd on a Chick Corea record. You could. It would have been fun to hear that. But yeah, you wouldn't put him on that other kind of stuff. Stylistically, it wouldn't fit. And just, the guy's touch, for that kind of music is different. And I've worked long enough on this that I try and change my touch and my approach. And so between trying to play the way that's right for the music, select the gear that's right for the music, and then in this case, these are a set of cymbals I don't really know well. I'm going to have to get to know them. It'll take about a day to really get to know them well enough that I feel comfortable with them. And then we'll get some great tones. We'll get some great sounds. I'll be looking forward to putting links up so people can hear this stuff once it comes out later, probably this year, first part of next year. And, I'll pin it. I'll be like, hey, here's some video from when I did that session, and that's the 2002 Big Beats. That's what they sound like. So, what time is it? Oh, it's 7:12. It's time for dinner, guys. Hey, the new Session Ace, Chris, the new Session Ace, I was saying a little earlier to Dave, like the new ESAs you're going to flip out about. You're just going to flip out. I really feel good about them. I feel they're just fun to listen to. They're fun to put in your ears and to hear what comes out. The last version sounded great, but really they were just a better version of the dual drivers. Like the dual drivers sound great. Some people didn't like the fit, but again, I made the fit to fit me, honestly. I mean, we tweaked it a little bit so that it would fit a lot of people. But some people, everybody loves the sound of the dual driver. Some people don't like the fit. They like, for some reason, it doesn't work for some people. That was one of the reasons why we changed when we did the 6 drivers and the ESAs. Went from the quads to the 6 driver to make something that fit more people well. But sound-wise, other than a little more clarity and being able to get more volume without distortion, those 6 driver ESAs the sound profile wasn't much different than the dual drivers. Just a better sound. A little more separation because you had 6 drivers so that you get a little more clarity in all the frequencies. But the profile was about the same. The fit was a little bit better. The fit's going to be even better, I think. It's a little bigger housing because we got to put more stuff in there, but it's not any bigger than if you had like a custom mold set. So it's not like it's not like you got headphones sticking out of your ear, but it is a little bit bigger housing than the 6 drivers were. And they're just fun to listen to, man. I really have the sound stage is a little bigger, the stereo width is a little bigger, and the low end is just rich, super rich. We got a coaxial dual coaxial driver in there. It's basically 2 diaphragms that are in a coaxial design. And so that they're perfectly in phase. So the lows and the low mids are perfectly in phase. Sounds absolutely fabulous. It's not super hyped in the bottom, but it's just rich. It's got this great low end. So now I'm selling ears. I hadn't sold nothing on this whole stream yet, but I'm selling them now, right? Anyway, I was saying earlier that we should ship them August 25th. I just got notification from the factory that they should get them to me in about another 6 days, 7 days. They should be here. And then the Pelican cases that come with them, those are showing up tomorrow. Some of the other accessories that are going to be in the package are showing up on Monday or Tuesday. By the end of next week, all the accessories should be here. By the 25th, we should be shipping those things. So you're going to love them. They're great. They're fabulous. All right, so I haven't eaten since about 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm going to go eat dinner, and then maybe I'll stream a little later. Keep your eye out. If I like the sound of these as they are and we don't need to do any kind of tweak stuff, I may come back on live with a few things just to kind of demo this a little bit for you, so specifically so you can hear the cymbals. I mean, the kit. I love the kit, but the cymbals are kind of the new thing. That's like the new toy for me to play with. I have to do this because I put my video up in Reddit about the clean cymbals thing, and all the guys in Reddit, I had so many comments about how, man, your cymbals are too tight. I'm like, I don't know how to make these any looser, man. They are the looseness that they are. It's a different tilter. These DW tilters don't, the washer underneath the felt, it's like the washer. It's not a washer. It's a stand, basically. And then there's a real firm felt, the cymbal sitting on top of it. Other than maybe getting a little bit more angle, just not having... But when I take the wing nut off of there, then you hear the edge of the cymbal as it goes, as it rocks back and forth against the post there. Anyway, so basically, I'm doing that for anybody that's watching that was looking at Reddit earlier this week. I got a little frustrated with people, I admit. But yeah, crash cymbals are nice and loose. Anyway, I have to learn to let that go. For now, we're gonna shut the stream down so I can go get some dinner. Cause man, I'm hangry right now. Man, gee whiz. Oh yeah, that grilled chicken sandwich I had for early lunch is gone. So anyway, thanks so much. If you sat here long enough, Chris, Dave, Paul, everybody that came and sat in. I'm doing weekly live streams like this for students over on my Drum Corner website. We're adding a bunch of new courses over the next 2 to 3, 4 months, including a course on how to practice. And it's not just how to practice, but how to learn. I'm taking a ton, the board where we've mapped out the whole course. It's as big as a classroom chalkboard, and it goes in so many different directions. That new course, it's probably going to take me a year to film the whole thing, but we're going to start releasing every month. There's going to be new lessons in that one course. I've got some courses we're going to start doing on playing in the studio, playing with a click track, how to get great sounds. Some of the things that we've talked about today, we'll talk about a little bit in that course, but we'll dive super, super, super deep on that stuff. Oh, my oh wow, my camera thing just died. Interesting. Hopefully, it's still recording. Yeah, we're going to dive super deep in a ton of stuff in some new courses on the Drum Corner site. If you haven't seen drumcorner.net, it's a subscription site that we've got a few courses up there already. I do some live streams like this. There's a ton of bonus content and play along stuff that's a part of the site as a part of the subscription. I'm selling stuff now. So we're gonna sell nothing, but check it out. I'm adding a ton of content over the next 4 months. Spending a lot more time on drumcorner.net, generating content for students, and doing stuff that I haven't seen on other lesson sites. I got subscriptions to pretty much every dang lesson website at this point, and so I know what everybody's doing. And there's a lot of stuff that isn't available for people. That's really kind of the aim with Drum Corner. That's all I got for you right now. I'm going to go get something to eat because it's almost 7:30. And a little later, I'll come back on the stream, and we'll see how this is doing. That's all I got for you now. Thanks so much. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I will